What's up, everyone? Welcome to the channel. I'm going to talk about gold today and why what gold does from here in the next few weeks and months is likely going to affect and dictate how the crypto market behaves, led by Bitcoin. So I think it's a very interesting time in the sense if you relate this back to the thesis I have, where there is a scenario or a probable scenario where Bitcoin finds its strength in the coming few weeks and months, whereas gold and metals, even if it's for a shorter period of time, finds its local top. If it's a local top, gets a pullback of sorts and then continues its upward bull trend, or it leads to a change in trend and then goes into kind of a sideways and downward trajectory in terms of its price action in the following months. That needs to be seen. But to start off with, if you look at gold, it broke out of its 1200 odd days of consolidation, leading to almost about 200%. Let's take a look. Yeah, almost about 181% of returns in the last 2-3 years, to be more precise. Now, looking at the RSI, again, we are on the 3-month. It's right now in its euphoric data pivots when it comes to momentum. There's massive strength in the metals markets overall. Monthly RSI is just raging bull, and not always. When I say raging bull, the monthly RSI currently is at about 93, right? These are very extreme euphoric levels that happens not quite often, but it happens when you need to kind of pay attention and look for signs where the trend is likely to reverse, and more often than not, you will find the majority holding their pants down when that happens, right? Goes into a bull market, sideways consolidation. During the course of that bull run, gives you indications of divergences, but one of those divergences, when the momentum kind of drops, leads to the eventual drawdown on the price, is kind of the story, right? So it's been going in its bull trajectory for almost 3 years now. Like I said, late end of October, November 22, 25 just finished, almost finished in terms of November, October. So 3 years. And I think it's currently trading 4,500 and change. So if I was to go with the Fib targets where it's broken out of this consolidation of about 1,200 odd days, I think $5,000 and a change, and from a psychology standpoint, a round number of $5,000 makes sense, which is about 500 odd bucks from where the price on gold is at the moment. Isn't far-fetched of an idea. So the 4.618 would make a lot of sense where gold tops out. Yeah. And why it's important in the sense with regards to Bitcoin and rest of the crypto markets, like I said in my prior videos, and you would have noticed if you are an active participant in not just crypto but SPX, the US stock market, the markets in general, metals led by gold have been soaring high. SPX has been making new all-time highs every week almost, but post the October liquidation event, not much of the strength has been seen in Bitcoin and rest of the crypto. So even though it's a risk-on asset, it's not been able to gain any of the strength and any of the momentum trajectory when compared to your stock market or to the metals, which is fine. And why the context with regards to where gold is trading at the moment and its likely short-term target, could be short term or could be a top target, whatever. But $5,000 effectively from a psychology round figure standpoint, technicals around 4.618 extension is important, and that is important. I'll get to that in a minute. But if you look at the monthly RSI, like I said, currently at 93, very extreme, very euphoric, needs to, what I look for trend change, as you would hopefully know, is the divergences. Yeah, so the weekly, I think, has closed, and higher high, lower low. Now, it could be it, but like I said, I follow a very limited number of patterns and very strong patterns. So this would definitely be kind of sign number one for someone like me to pay attention, where the price, and it's made like first set of its divergence. So that's red flag number one, where that divergence has formed. It could be where I'm saying on the $5,000 target, $5,000. So maybe price makes another attempt, and it does something like, you get the point. But then there's another lower high on divergence. So effectively a triple drive divergence pattern is what I would big bet from a probability standpoint that a top has been formed. But to begin with, it has already made its first set of divergence, and there's no guarantee that the price is going to make a triple pattern divergence for a top to be confirmed. It's the levels which is important, and the context with regards to where those levels are being formed. Right now, this is important because when you look at the strength of Bitcoin against gold, that's where it gets interesting, and I'll tell you in a minute. Let's go on to the 3-month. So this is Bitcoin against gold, right? This is back in 2021, where it made its all-time high against gold. Capitulation back in October of 22, October of 22, the 3-month candle. And if you recall what we just saw on gold, that's where from this point onwards, gold started its bull trajectory and then broke its previous all-time highs and is currently trading on 4,500 or whatever. But Bitcoin stalled on its previous levels, and then since then has been getting rejected and showing weakness against gold. If you look at the chart on the 3-month, Bitcoin against gold, this box here is the 3-month range, which is effectively this candle. Okay. So it's getting rejected from the top end of the 3-month range, and currently the price has breached the lower end of the 3-month close of this box. Going on to the weekly, and we'll relate this back to the levels which we drew onto the Bitcoin chart in yesterday's video in a minute. So the price is currently on the underside of the 3-month range block and is approaching this white pivot, which is the weekly support resistance flip. Effectively, this is a very key level, right, from a weekly pivot standpoint. And this box here is where I think Bitcoin likely either throws a capitulation wick or it starts to find its bottoming formation. So, in summary, the euphoricness on gold is likely approaching towards its end. Divergences are slowly showing up on high time frames on gold. Bitcoin against gold is approaching levels where, from a probability standpoint, one would expect it to bottom, right? And the levels currently on the chart for Bitcoin against gold, not just from an order block standpoint, but if I apply the fibs, here's your bottom, here's the high. The 0.618 isn't far-fetched. It's sitting right on top of this bottoming zone, for which is effectively the 3-month order block. And from where the price currently is right now, it's another 16%, round figure 17% to the 0.618. And that's a for folks who don't know what these levels are. 0.61, these from a fib standpoint is known to be a golden fib ratio, which is the retracement level where you see more often than not the price getting reversed from, right? So the 0.618 sitting right on top of the 3-month support block, where it's far to the extremes in terms of levels, but very likely that Bitcoin finds its bottoming formation around 0.618 and this 3-month block zone. And then from that point onwards, I would expect Bitcoin to make its next run towards the new all-time highs, and the range which I currently have in mind is 140 to 160, at this point at least. So what would that mean in terms of Bitcoin, where we are saying from where the price currently is, another 16% drop? Where will that likely take the price? So 16, let's make it around 17. Make it this. So this would be 72. Now, if you recall, I did say in my last video that I don't necessarily like how the price has been consolidating to the underside of the 50 moving average on the weekly. It's been rejected quite clearly by the immediate resistance around 93 and 95K. So the resistance is still intact. Yes, the support box is holding, but given the context of the strength, or rather the weakness of Bitcoin against gold, I can see a scenario where this is the but this is like the lowest price point, which is 74,420, which the price formed in April of 2025. It can make like a swing failure pattern. So the price can make a swing failure pattern. So what I mean by that is, here's your downtrend. Where's the, so it's getting rejected. Maybe it just does something like that. Comes here, makes another attempt on the close, but gets rejected. Breaches that low, comes back, and then there you go. So it can make can do whatever formation in the sense to breach 74,420. That would be your 16% drop. Lines up with gold getting to the Bitcoin gold chart, if you remember, So the strength of Bitcoin against gold reaching the retracement levels of 0.618, 16% drop there. And if there's any wick or whatever, in the first instance, I would expect price to find its support around this block. So I think it's very interesting to put the context of gold against Bitcoin. I can look at SPX in a minute, which is again going strong. Similar to gold, will be looking for divergences in the coming weeks and months. And again, the trend is your friend kind of a narrative until it fails you. So both gold and SPX are still in a strong uptrend. There are signs of divergences coming along, but those divergences on higher time frames, and when I say higher time frames, it's from weekly onwards. So weekly, monthly, 3 month, those are the divergences which are more reliable and more kind of result oriented in these markets. More, at least for me, that's what I bet on primarily. So the trend is still intact on that. What I am waiting for is for that strength to get reflected in the crypto market led by Bitcoin. So the narrative or the bias to feed to the idea that Bitcoin makes a new all-time high in the coming months would be Bitcoin getting a bottoming formation against gold. So starting to find its strength against gold. As we saw, there are divergences forming, so it takes time to develop and materialize on those higher time frames. So there are signs there of divergences coming along on gold. So I'm expecting gold to find a local bottom. Not the local bottom, sorry, the top. So all of that kind of lines up to that case where the bull case on Bitcoin comes to fruition, and once Bitcoin rallies, you're also kind of given that they will do multiple X's. So it's very interesting to what gold is doing, how Bitcoin lines up against gold at present, and in which case another 17 odd percent of drop in Bitcoin likely does a SFP swing failure pattern here. Another kind of flush, in which event I would expect another kind of indication to show up. So if the price drops another 17 odd percent, so here I would expect like a lower low to form on price, and either a higher high on the momentum or equal kind of a double bottom on momentum for the RSI. So again, this is a downtrend, a bull divergence, a regular bullish divergence forming on an SFP pattern, a key important price point pivot, and it kind of, once price reclaims this price point of 74K, makes its way back towards this box and starts to grind upwards. It all makes sense. It all makes sense. So that's what I'm looking for, and why the context of gold is important, and very interesting coming weeks and months. And I think when that happens, if that happens, it's going to be quick. It's not going to tinkle around for ages. That last climax kind of wave, and again, it's the climax bit, the euphoric big bit in the crypto market, which is missing. So if those divergences that I'm talking about specifically around the US stock market comes to fruition and establishes itself on the higher time frame, so macro is in question, and I think there will be a bigger pullback. I wouldn't even say pullback, maybe a trend change or as such, right? So in traditional terms, maybe a traditional bear market in the US stock leading to a kind of short-term recession or something affecting all of the markets. So before that happens, it's the euphoric stage, which is missing in crypto, and the stuff that I've just talked about, if that comes together, adds on to the bull case and the bull narrative for Bitcoin to lead the final climax euphoric leg in the crypto market. Fun final bit to look at SPX, the US stock market, before I close the video. I like to look at 3 month. 3 month is like the goat in terms of time frames on if you have to look at the macro and stuff. Yeah, so I think this was what, a 12-year. This to a 13-year sideways market for SPX. I think I've given my kind of targets here. Let's just pull this 72, 7,500, 8,000. Maybe there's another detailed video on SPX that I can do, but let me just do kind of a shorter view of what I think. If you put like a parallel channel on here, does that make sense? Hopefully it does. A macro view in terms of how the SPX has been in an upward trajectory ever since this horrendous crash of the 1929. The top end of this channel is sitting pretty at 10,000+ points on SPX. Let that sink in. Anything is anything is possible. In the short term, in the interim, it's 7,200, 7,500 levels that I'm keeping an eye on at least. So those divergences that I was referencing, let's take a look at that and show what I mean. So there's like one, again, the drop for this divergence already took place, so that's there, but it's the triple divergence pattern that I just referenced. So let's take a surprise here, higher high, lower low on the momentum, there's a drop, fine. The price from this point in the current trading stage where the price is now, it's made another higher high. Brilliant. What about the RSI? Seems like it's going to make a lower high, right? Again, it needs to prove, it needs to materialize. The divergence needs to materialize, but the signs are there. Now it can take weeks, it can take another couple of months, another quarter, whatever, but the signs of weakness are also cropping up in SPX. It's showing itself in the gold chart, and I am looking for that climax and that strength to show in Bitcoin and rest of the crypto markets to show up, and then we can all have a bust later 26, early 27, whatever, if that's the case. But yeah, pay attention to what gold does in the next few weeks, month, and where gold and Bitcoin stack up against each other. And again, just before I end, if you look at the chart here that I was referencing on Bitcoin against gold, if you look at the structure, right, it's this pivot which I referenced on the Bitcoin chart that it needs to hold because it holds a lot of significance in terms of the structure of the market and the structure of the price for Bitcoin. And this would be the zone where I would expect on the Bitcoin chart for the price to hold itself, right? Against gold, this level is key, but if you look at the 3-month range perspective, the price has kind of already breached that. Again, it's kind of related, right, in terms of the structuring bit that I was talking about. So look at the 3-month on the Bitcoin USD. You'll see the chart in a very similar structure. So on Bitcoin, I'm saying this level has to hold, which is about 35. But this level here, I can absolutely see in the event there is a big downturn of things. Markets have been raging bullish the last few years. SPX already making highs every single week. Gold, silver, metals making humongous gains. It all makes sense. Anything that goes up that exponentially and euphorically has to come down, and that coming down is also going to be extreme. So this zone here on the 3-month on Bitcoin is to be watched out for. I wouldn't be surprised when the bear market comes, there's a wick that gets thrown into this zone. This would be a giga generational bid on Bitcoin, and the next cycle, I think it's going to be just Bitcoin, personally, and less or no alts. So from a structure standpoint, where the Bitcoin USD has not breached this 3-month range and leave aside being anywhere close to this, the Bitcoin gold is telling a different story. It's already approaching this zone, and this zone from a Bitcoin against gold narrative to what I would have expected Bitcoin USD to reach to have the price make a bottom. So it's not the USD chart which is bottoming, it's the BTC against gold chart that's bottoming. And I'm happy about it. And I think that strength, that euphoric climax in the crypto market, it's a good probability that it shows itself in the coming months. And yeah, there's that scenario of another 15, 17, maybe 20% drop to Bitcoin from the current price at a minimum, I would say. If that happens, and then how quickly it retraces back and gets back above 74,400 and gets back above this box would be the key to make a decision, in the sense how quickly it's able to do that. or if it doesn't, then we already have laid out the scenario of if it's a long drawn bear market lasting another 6+, 8+ months, how I am going to navigate that scenario as well. So I hope this was helpful. Until I talk next, thank you for listening in. Please like, share, subscribe. So until next time, thank you for watching. Cheers.